So I just finished episode 2 of The Last of Us, and I want to talk about some of my favorite parts of the episode. Spoilers ahead. So the show starts off by doing something the game has never really done, and that is explicitly showing the global effect of the cordyceps outbreak by taking us to Jakarta the day that the cordyceps in humans were discovered. So the Indonesian government has this corpse of a woman who was biting people at this flower factory, basically confirming now that the flower theory is true and that's how the cordyceps spread so quickly. But they bring in this doctor who studies funguses to look at her corpse and kind of say, well, what medicine can we use? What vaccine can we use? And the doctor just says bombs, basically confirming that every country that was affected by cordyceps handled it the same way that the US major cities did, which was through complete destruction. In the games, it's really implied that there's nowhere to really go, but by showing us that scene, it kind of confirms that not only is there no treatment, there's nowhere else where cordyceps has an effect. And I want... We also finally have live action clickers. I know it was in the trailer, but we actually get to see them in action. In the games, it just feels like an instant death and there's nothing you can really do about it. But in the show, they basically eat bullets is what it feels like. And that Tess, Ellie, and Joel all have to use environmental distractions to get around them or take them out. If they weren't done correctly, it wasn't going to feel like The Last of Us, so it's good to know that these are going to be spot on. We also now have a better understanding of how tendrils are going to work versus spores. Mesn and Druckmann basically say spores couldn't have been recreated to the extent of what they were in the game. It wouldn't have been as believable, which is what a lot of people said in my previous comment section as well. Basically how the concept of tendrils work is if they step on like the wrong piece of fungus or something like that, it could signal to the rest of the living organism of the cordyceps outbreak and drive thousands of infected their way to attack them, really making it feel overbearing and intimidating. And God, it'd be cool if they incorporated that into the game somehow. And then the last part of the episode is devoted to Tess's final sacrifice. So like in the game, Tess is bitten on the shoulder and she knows that it's a death sentence, and she's able to use that bite as sort of proof to Joel that Ellie's infection is different, that Ellie's actually, her body is somehow fighting off the cordyceps, and that she could be the key to a cure. But where this differs is instead of like having a bunch of Fedra agents like swarm in and kill her behind the scenes, since we play from Joel's perspective, Tess is still able to go out on her own terms like she was in the game, but this time in the show, they've somehow triggered all the infected to come by stepping on a tendril, and Tess is able to then weaponize the location that they're at that's filled with like gasoline and grenades to set up a trap for all of these infected outside the QZ in Boston. Where it got to be too much for me though is the fact that like you see the clickers coming up behind her and one of them has like his tendrils coming out of his mouth and he begins to like start fucking tonguing her, and she's got this lighter in her hand and she's just trying to get it lit, and I don't know if it was urgency or just uncomfortable or like a weird combination of both, but it felt like such more of a creative and fitting death as opposed to like walking out of the room, hearing blah, 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 and walking back in and seeing her corpse on the ground. So what were your thoughts on the episode, and are you looking forward to next week's episode, which is going to be the Frank and Bill episode? It's gonna hurt, so come back next week and we're gonna cry together.